An armored vehicle ramming the door of the presidential palace, and a face-off between Bolivia's president and an army chief. Just hours after this drama unfolded, the military would retreat. And President Luis Arce would hail that as a victory for democracy. While Bolivians debated the absurdity of the events and questioned whether it was actually a coup, the president was quick to point fingers at foreign forces and their interest in a critical mineral, lithium. It's one of the most important materials that power the global green energy transition. And Bolivia has a lot of it, though untapped. Major world powers including China, Russia and the US all have their eyes on this unexploited potential. So who controls Bolivia's lithium? And how can Bolivia benefit from this so-called white gold? Bolivia sits on the world's largest lithium reserves. The Lithium Triangle, which includes Bolivia, Argentina and Chile, holds half of the world's lithium resources. While neighboring Argentina and Chile have been investing and boosting their lithium production, Bolivia's share of the market is still insignificant. There are several reasons for the slow development. Firstly, it's because Bolivia is also rich in other natural resources.
The Bolivian economy really relied on natural gas primarily, and there wasn't much of an effort to switch or also look for lithium reserves. That wasn't really a main focus.
Professor Juan Bacano was a lithium policy advisor to Bolivian President Luis Arce between 2019 and 2022. He says years of underdevelopment mean the country doesn't have the infrastructure nor the technological know-how in lithium extraction.
Bolivia is behind in terms of the technology, the capacity, even of course the investment by foreign actors is really almost nothing compared to what happens in Chile and Argentina.
Bolivia needs the financial resources and expertise from foreign investment. But the strong state control of the natural resources has caused hesitation among international investors. By law, only the state-owned company YLB has the right to conduct lithium mining.
In the Bolivian constitution, the lithium is a natural resource, and only the state can develop or exploit it. Looking back historically, I think these are logical because Bolivia has lost a lot of natural resources like tin and silver and gold, etc., to foreign companies over the many centuries.
On top of that, internal political struggles also get in the way of Bolivia's lithium development. In 2019, the government was forced to scrap a joint lithium project with a German company because of public protests, where local communities said the project wouldn't benefit them. Former President Evo Morales was ousted days later due to nationwide protests related to his disputed re-election. Morales accused it of being a coup against lithium.
Está en proceso un golpe de Estado.
That claim, like the one we heard earlier from current President Luis Arce, was not supported by concrete evidence.
So that's one good example of the politicization of lithium as opposed to having a more technocratic approach towards the lithium sector.
Meanwhile, global powers are still eyeing these untapped reserves. And when Bolivia's government tried again in 2021 to call for foreign investment in its lithium industrialization, China took its chance. As the world's leading electric vehicle producer and a major global player in renewable energy, securing lithium supplies is high on China's priority list. In fact, China is already the world's biggest lithium importer, its main sources being Chile and Argentina. In Bolivia, a Chinese consortium eventually beat companies from the US and Argentina. The consortium, led by the world's largest battery maker for electric vehicles, CATL, pledged over $90 billion in the project.
CATL was able to put together a consortium to bring all of that technology and infrastructure capacity to bear. Very few firms in the world are able to meet that standard.
Rebecca Ray's research focuses on Chinese overseas economic activities. She said there's another big difference between Chinese and Western investors.
A benefit that Chinese firms have is what we call patient capital, an advantage over Western firms because they don't need each quarterly profit report to be maximized, either because they're state-owned enterprises or part of a corporate consortium. They're able to ride out the highs and lows of developing countries' economic cycle with more confidence.
For Bolivia, choosing to collaborate with China is a pragmatic decision, not a political one.
Bolivia as is most of Latin America, resisting the framework of having to choose between West and East as economic partners.
Bolivia has already put out another open tender again in 2024, where over 20 companies from countries including the US, Argentina, France, and the UK were reportedly selected for the third round. And Chile and Argentina both received billions of dollars from Chinese investment in their lithium sectors, while also forming partnerships with US and EU companies. But for China, there is a strategic geopolitical reason to invest in Bolivia.
Chinese companies, especially CATL, was more interested in controlling the deposits of lithium, right? The reserves, not really necessarily developing them, but being able to control them so that eventually, if in 5 or 10 years they need lithium, then the CATL could eventually, and China, because it's a state-affiliated company, could go into the Bolivian lithium sector. But being able to sign these agreements, it closes off potential avenues for the U.S. and other countries, and that is important politically, geopolitically as well.
And the US only has itself to blame.
The U.S. doesn't really have a strategy, a national strategy for lithium as China does. In that sense, it's been also a failure by the U.S. in developing its own approach towards Bolivia.
Although agreements have been signed, this doesn't mean Bolivia can now finally start capitalizing on its white gold. Remember the law we talked about earlier?
Ultimately, that's the major problem, is that it's not constitutional for Bolivia to allow private or foreign extraction of lithium. There would have to be a need to either change the constitution, or new laws are developed so that the YLB can collaborate more with foreign companies.
The Bolivian government proposed the creation of a joint venture where the nation owns 51% of the entity, but it's still unclear if that could overcome the legal hurdle. Critics have said there's a lack of transparency in the bidding process and agreements of these lithium projects.
Consultations are really rare. They're not really interactive. They don't allow for great input from the communities.
Questions such as how to manage the environmental impact and how to ensure that local communities can benefit are largely unanswered.
In fact, it's not entirely clear that Bolivia has successfully set a comprehensive labor and environmental regulatory framework for this industry. The extent to which the Bolivian government is able to incorporate those concerns into its regulatory framework will, I believe, determine the success of this project.
If these hurdles can be overcome, Bolivia could reap the rewards, with the global demand for lithium expected to quadruple by 2030. But that also means Bolivia needs to move quickly in this lithium race.